All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Valerie Swenson, and I am an advisor in the School of Engineering First Year Advising Hub. And I advise biomedical students. And we're here for Industry Hour with our biomedical engineering current students and alum. So for the first portion of today's program, we'll have Bulos from the Career Center speak, and then we will get into panel discussion and questions. So without further ado, I will mute myself, and Bulos, you can go ahead and get started.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Bulos Abdallah. I am the career counselor at the CCPD. You might not know who I am, mainly because I work with School of Science students, and I'm kind of filling in tonight for Emily Seals and Kristen Kettering. But I can tell you our team is awesome. I love working with everybody at the CCPD, and there's so many resources that I'm going to share with you in the next couple minutes that everybody here and everybody watching can take advantage of. I'm going to share my screen. I do have a couple of slides to share with everybody. If anybody has any questions, Valerie, you too, please ask away. You can also pop it in the chat too if you'd like, since I have my chat bubble open. But yeah, so let's get started with these slides then. So how can the CCPD help? There are a ton of different resources, like I said, that anybody can take advantage of. A lot of people automatically jump to assume that the CCPD is just a one-stop shop that assists people with their resumes. We are a little bit more dynamic than that, though. Yes, you can toss in your cover letter in with the resume, and we would do as best as we can to get you ready and fully confident on paper to get you to the next stage of your career, which is an internship or co-op, research, I already said internship, full-time job, whatever it is that you are looking to achieve, swing by the CCPD and we will get you started and help you with laying out your foundation on paper. But other than resume, cover letter, we will work with you on interviewing, how to prepare for an interview. We'll practice mock interviews. We assist students with salary negotiations, especially for those seniors or those graduate students looking to graduate very soon and maybe they're juggling multiple offers. Um, just a couple of examples of different ways that we are there to assist students in, many different shapes and size and all that sort of stuff. One big thing I wanted to show you that's on this slide here, though, is hiring statistics. A lot of data gets recorded at the end of the academic year from the Future Plan Survey. If you're not familiar with what the Future Plan Survey is, it's basically a survey that students that are um, recently graduated or are soon to be graduating complete, and they give us all sorts of information about what sort of services that they use at the CCPD, what sort of opportunities they're looking for, what sort of opportunities they have already landed, what their salaries are. And we use a lot of that information to help counsel current students, and a lot of that information is super helpful. If you're on our website, if you click on students and click on hiring statistics, I'm going to put the link in the chat for anyone here if they want to take a look. You're going to see a list of our most recent annual reports, and these annual reports will have information on past employers that hired our students from each individual class, salary statistics. So for BMed, like if I wanted to kind of go through this a little bit really quick, we'll kind of see what that figure looks like. So on average for class of 2020, you can probably expect to have gotten paid somewhere around $50 to $97,000. On average, it was $73,750. And the trends kind of showing that number going up. So class of 2021, you might be in luck. Class of 2022, even better, right? And so on and so forth. Some examples of employers that hired those students in the past or, very recently. All of that information is in that annual report that I just was on a couple seconds ago, but we just wanted to highlight a couple of the bigger companies that have hired our students. What's also missing from this list, though, is Rensselaer, right? RPI normally hires students to work in a lab or work in the department somewhere, whether it's research or whether it's for industry. I just wanted to kind of highlight that. But a lot of these companies, they're on campus, they're always actively recruiting. Some of them, they might be familiar to you, some of them you might have never heard of before, but they are all very much active on campus, or now that we're in the post-COVID world, they're all very active virtually. While I'm on the slide, I might cover Handshake for just a minute or two. We just wanted to highlight a couple of opportunities that are available for biomedical engineers, specifically for RPI students. Um, but all of these opportunities, though, these four were found in Handshake. If you're not familiar with Handshake, I would definitely spend a little bit of time, if you can, getting used to what it is. As soon as you're logged into Handshake, though, make sure you go over to your profile and complete it as much as you can. Get it to close to 100% as possible. So for this profile, you can ignore a lot of this information. It's just kind of there as like a placeholder text. Um, but for example, because I work with a lot of computer science students, I kind of shape this to be like a computer science student or what it should look like for a CS student. But for BMed students, this could be pretty similar in terms of like what your work experience has been, your volunteer experience, any sort of clubs or organizations that you might be involved with, any sort of like leadership positions, your interests, courses, your skills, projects, so on and so forth. Um, One big proponent to this profile, what I would suggest that everybody does is upload your resume as well, especially if you had it looked at by someone at the CCPD. Have your most recent resume uploaded and make sure it's visible as well. So what this does is it gets you basically put on the Handshake map. It gets you noticed by employers. So you're passively looking for opportunities without having to apply to any of them. Employers will find you based off the information that you decide to share and decide to make visible. Two things will happen. One is probably the more likely option is they're going to invite you to a lot of their events that are coming up. They might be inviting other students that are similar to you as well. But there are instances where a recruiter will message you directly, and I gotta respond to that person. But they'll respond to you directly, one on one, possibly set up some sort of an interview or some sort of a chat because they saw something that they really liked on your profile. They saw something that they really liked on your resume. So that's why I really stress first thing that you do on Handshake is really take some time and complete your profile if you can. After you're done that, head over to the jobs tab and start looking for opportunities, and you can start applying for opportunities here. Some are very easy where you can just click on this button and you'll be able to upload your resume, but some like this apply externally, they'll redirect you to the company's website where you can submit the application. Both are equally as effective, right? So like don't feel like one is more important than the other or anything like that. And there's a bunch of other features and resources. I won't really spend a whole lot of time on that right now, but Handshake has a lot to offer. So if you have any sort of questions on Handshake, or if you're looking for any sort of assistance and wanting to learn it or anything like that, feel free to visit our office or send me an email or get in contact with us. We would be more than happy to sit down and work with you on that. So salary statistics, I already kind of mentioned it a little bit. You saw what the averages were, you saw what the ranges were. Overall, in 2020, biomedical engineers were looking to get paid somewhere around the mid to low 90s. Um, the job market because of COVID was kind of strange. We were seeing some pretty high salaries recently. We haven't really seen anything that was super low, right? Everybody's hiring. The job market is pretty competitive right now, but there are a lot of opportunities out there, and there are a lot of very good opportunities out there as well. It's just a matter of getting you to market yourself effectively, aka having strong profiles online like Handshake or LinkedIn, having a strong resume. And if you feel like you don't have a lot of strong or big items that hold a lot of weight in your resume, come see us because we do have different tips, different tricks of really getting you prepared and getting you feeling really confident going into any sort of applications. So I covered a lot of this information already in that first slide. I kind of started talking a little bit more off the rails there, but like I said, resumes, cover letters, it's more than just that. We've talked to people about their majors, um, in terms of what that can get them in the future, what sort of careers or occupations or what kind of roadmap that they are really finding themselves in, and what kind of opportunities that they might be able to find in the future. Salary negotiations, we talked about. Mock interviewing is something that we have a lot of pride in. We really set you up and really challenge you and really put the pressure on you. That way, when you actually sit down in front of a real interview, you feel very much prepared, and hopefully it's not going to be super difficult. But we have a lot of fun with those sorts of things, and we find that the students that we work with find those mock interviews very, very helpful. We've also sat down and had a lot of discussions about grad school. Um, what does your career look like after you earn that graduate degree or even that PhD? We've talked about what industry and what research might look like if you do have those sort of credentials. And we do have, although our main self-assessment resource right now is down and RPI is still looking to find some sort of replacement. However, we do have some additional resources that you can take advantage of, and we can kind of coach you and show you how you can use those to really figure out exactly what it is that you are really strong with or what areas you need a little bit more improvement in. And we can kind of talk out those thoughts together and we can go from there. So that's all I have for you today. Um, I hope this was all very helpful. Please feel free to connect with me or connect with anybody at the CCPD. I did put both of our email addresses in the chat. For anybody watching, I don't know if you can see the chat, but my email address is abdalb@rpi.edu. And the CCPD's email is ccpd@rpi.edu. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. Again, my name is Bulos Abdallah, career counselor at the CCPD, and I'll take your questions if you have any.
Great. Thank you, Bulas.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Valerie.
Any questions from our students on the line?
I actually have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So so Handshake, I guess I'm so far removed from college, so this is admitting that here.
That's
So what would you say is the distribution of opportunities between Handshake and LinkedIn? Just because our I guess more mature alums are probably more used to the LinkedIn
Mhm.
situation. And then how is it that an employer gets on Handshake versus LinkedIn, or is it just sort of become a standard that they're on both?
That's a great question. If an employer is on Handshake, then there's a very high chance that they are on LinkedIn. Handshake is basically a college platform that puts college students in touch with recruiters and vice versa. It gives recruiters the opportunity to recruit for only college students. The main differences, if you remember, between JobLink and Handshake is JobLink was very, very, very exclusive to just RPI. And that was a good thing, but it was also like a really bad thing because a lot of the language that RPI uses is not very similar language that a bunch of other schools use. And unfortunately, what we were finding is we weren't actually finding that there were a lot of opportunities out there. So Handshake does a really good job in kind of making all of those leads a little bit more broader, um, where JobLink couldn't. And you're just going to be able to find a whole lot more opportunities that fit better for current college students. And for recent grads, if you graduated within the last 1, 2, or 3 years, you're still going to be able to find some pretty good quality applications there. LinkedIn is something a lot of people have access to, not including, college students. It's pretty much everybody. I mean, you and I have access to LinkedIn jobs and everything. So the pools are going to be a lot bigger. The candidate pools are going to be much higher in volume, which it doesn't mean that students are going to be more qualified, but it's just that there's so many other candidates that they're fighting for that same position for. So Handshake does a pretty good job in kind of limiting those applicants to just college students.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, of course. That's a really good question. I hope I answered it. Cool. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from students or panelists? All right, so we'll go ahead and conclude, I guess, with your part, Lewis. Thank you so much for joining us on the line today.
Yeah,
And
thank you so much
that
for having me.
information.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So our next portion will be with our panelists here. So basically, for anyone who isn't interested or isn't familiar, rather, with the format of this portion of the program, it is our panelist portion. So we'll be asking a bunch of questions of our panelists, create a bit of discussion, and much like this past presentation, at the very end, we will have an opening for questions. So with that in mind, I have 3 panelists here on the line. They are RPI alum and also one current student. So I guess what we'll do is go ahead and get started with these questions. The first thing I would like to do is have each of you introduce yourself very briefly. So if you could state your name and where you're from originally, also where you live now, if you'd like. You're all biomedical engineering students, that's why you're on the line today, but perhaps if you have a concentration or something like that, you can mention that. And then for those of you who are employed, mention where you work. And for those of you who may have had internships, maybe briefly mention the most recent internship that you had. All right. So I think what we'll do is we will go, just because this is the order it's in on my screen. Sarah, we'll have you go first, followed by Raya, and then followed by Katrina, and we'll probably keep that for the majority of the time for these questions too. Perfect.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, Valerie. My name is Sarah Cagle, and I graduated from RPI in 1998, so a long time ago. And my concentration was mechanical, and I had started originally in medical devices, working with cardiac catheters. And I did that for a few years and then moved over to the company that I currently work for, where I'm the director of operations for reference standards for the United States Pharmacopoeia. And that's really more, it's almost more chemical engineering, but we do a lot of production, so the mechanical aspect comes into play too. So that's me in a nutshell, but I'm sure you'll have more questions for me and learn a little bit more about me as we go on.
Great, thank you. Raya?
Hello, I just had to look at my LinkedIn profile for my internships. That's how my brain works. Yeah, so my name is Raya Lim, BME class of '07. I'm looking at my notes. From New Jersey, well, born in the Philippines, raised in New Jersey, still in New Jersey. And my concentration was materials, so I was more doing lab stuff versus the mechanical route. And I also had a studio arts minor, so I took basic drawing, painting, sculpture, things like that. And I did some digital art too. So a lot of different things at RPI. Currently at a company called Anava Health, and we are very early stage, pre-seed funding. So that's sort of what I'm elbow deep in now. I started my career in R&D. I've been in cardiovascular devices, infusion products, implantables, orthopedics, and that whole time I've been on cross-functional teams. You know, it started in IED and then final design projects, and then that is how your life will be primarily in this space. So because of that, I was able to parlay that experience to at a small startup company called Pixie Scientific, and I was doing quality engineering and manufacturing engineering there because we're such a small team. And those assets were recently purchased by a new owner. So I've stuck on with two of my teammates there. So it's the four of us doing everything. And yeah, so we're hopeful to get funding before the year closes out and really hit the ground running. So
Great, thank you. Katrina?
Hi everyone, my name is Katrina Bliss. I'm a senior biomedical engineering major. My concentration is in biomaterials, and then I'm also getting a minor in law and policy. No full-time job yet, but I've had internships with Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, and then most recently this past summer with Edwards Life Sciences. So really excited to be here.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so these next couple of questions, I guess the first one is for each of you, and we'll go through that same cycle. Could you briefly explain what made you decide to be a biomedical engineer? And Sarah, we'll start with you.
That's a good question. I knew all through high school that I was probably like many of you, that I was good at math and science, and it was interesting and kind of fun, which is probably a weird thing for a lot of people to think, you know, physics is fun or chemistry is fun, but those things were interesting to me. And so I knew I wanted some kind of career where I would get to apply science and math. And I also was pretty, I guess, hands-on. Like I wanted some kind of career where I was creating something new and I could be creative. And the other part of me wanted to do something that could help other people. And I felt like biomed was a good combination of those two things where I could use the skills that I had and the talents that I had, things that I was good at, to make other people's lives better, you know, work on products and work for companies that really were trying to do something for the greater good. And you know, where I work now, it's all based on public health and improving the quality of medicine for other people. So I feel like that helped me do something that I wanted to do, but also make a career out of it where I could support myself and, you know, have a lot of different options. I think with biomed, you can go in a lot of different directions, and you know, Rhea will be able to tell you about a completely different direction that she went from me, but they're good paths, and it allows you to take advantage of opportunities that present themselves throughout your career. And RPI gives you a great education and a great foundation for your career after school.
Thank you, Sarah. Rhea?
hi. Okay. So when I was, what is it, 2.5, well, I grew up with two doctors in the house, so it's not weird to think math and science is the cool thing or the fun thing. Their shop talk was very different from my friends' parents, which is fine. And so when I was really little, my dad had a massive heart attack and needed a transplant. So I was always told like the Jarvik heart kept him alive until he got the transplant. So it's this mystical thing. So senior year of high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Considered med school, unconsidered med school, thought about education. And then my principal was like, there's this program at Rensselaer. It's the oldest one, and I think you'd really like it. And she was right. So that's how I got in, and I've been in ever since, like I said, now in different capacities of the field, but stayed pretty much in devices. Yeah, so still here.
Great. Thank you, Rhea. And Katrina, yes, for you.
Yeah, so my story is a little unique. I actually grew up on a farm in central Pennsylvania. So from a very young age, I was exposed to a lot of things that later I would find were engineering concepts and problem solving and things. So I remember oftentimes this would be like helping my dad fix a tractor that was broken, or when my cow was having a calf, the vet came and I helped perform an ultrasound right there in the barn. And at the time, I just thought it was super cool, or sometimes, just part of like the day's work, getting the barn work done. But later, I would find that these were two things I was super passionate about. So having that hands-on, actually fixing things, thinking critically, and then also kind of like that vet science, medicine side of things. And biomedical engineering just so happened to be the perfect combination of both of those things. So I remember seeing that RPI had a full program. A lot of other schools I was considering maybe only had a minor in biomedical engineering, but was really happy that RPI had a full curriculum. So, and then I can echo a lot of what Sarah was saying, that biomedical engineering is so fulfilling. You leave work having worked on something that could save someone's life, and that could be your own grandmother or your mom or dad or something. And that's, for me, that's something that I prioritize. I don't just want to go to work to make money or provide for someone. I want to actually make an impact. And I think that's just something that like really makes it worth it for me.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And something each of you touched upon really is a very personal aspect in the decision to become a biomedical engineer. I talk to students about biomedics, interacting with the human body and basically improving lives. So each of you really did touch upon that. So the next questions coming up for this portion will be basically a single question for each person. We kind of tried to tailor it to some materials that were submitted either last year, or perhaps things we took from your experiences. So we'll start with, I guess, the individual questions next. So we'll have Toby joining us too. Here's Toby, everybody. Oh, all right. Okay. All right, there goes Toby. So for this portion, again, we'll start asking some individual questions. So Sarah, this first question is for you. From materials that you had provided previously, you began as a development engineer earlier in your career, correct? And then you've since moved to more product direction and management. I guess, can you talk a bit about what you did in these areas and how you've moved into your current role?
Sure. My first job was as a development engineer. So I worked in R&D, like I had said previously, on cardiac catheters. And it was a fun position. There were actually probably 6 pretty young engineers in the program, or in the group that we had. So it was a pretty dynamic group, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot from the other people that I worked with. And there were some older engineers there too that I got a lot of good information, because they had so much experience and they taught me how to solve problems better. I think through college you learn problem solving, but when you're in the real world, you have to do it, and there's often a pretty tight deadline that you need to meet. And so they were helpful in teaching me how to solve problems and not get stressed out about it, like how to methodically do it and not drive myself crazy. So that was a very fun time. And I guess as I moved up in my career, and many of you will find this, you know, you get promotions and you get given more responsibility. And for me, it kind of happened kind of naturally. Like, it wasn't like I had my eye on a specific job or I wanted to be in management. That wasn't necessarily the goal, but I found that I was very good at leading other groups of people and inspiring them to do better and create more and solve more difficult problems. And so I think for me, it happened over many years until I got to the point where I am now. But it was just something I felt comfortable with, and a lot of people don't necessarily feel comfortable leading others and telling them what they want them to do and giving them that constructive feedback, and that's often a hard skill. So if you have the technical abilities and you're able to have good people skills, you can often move up the management track a little faster than you may move up the technical track. And that's the route that I chose to go, just because I felt like I would have a bigger impact if I had control and influence over more groups of people and more products. And so that was important to me, and that's really how I ended up in the role where I am now. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much for that. It's a very broad question too. You did a good job. You touched upon all of it. So my next question is, in your previous materials too, you had mentioned the importance of the co-op program here at Rensselaer. Can you tell us a bit about that experience and how it prepared you for your current career?
Yeah, for sure. I do think the co-op experience is very important for engineers, and I'm really glad that I decided to do that. It does add a little bit of time to your college career, and you graduate, you know, at least in my case, I graduated a semester behind a lot of my friends, but it was very instrumental in getting that first job out of school, and it was helpful in really understanding what I was expecting once I got out of school. I think before you do a co-op, you have an idea of what you're going to be doing as a career. It's not necessarily reality. And by doing a co-op, you understand what the expectations will be and what you need to focus on to be successful. And then fast forward 20 years as an employer, I find those types of programs especially helpful when I'm looking for candidates to hire. And if I see that they have experience either as an internship or as a co-op, and let's say I have two equally qualified candidates, and I have one resume that has co-op or internship experience, and I have another one that has nothing, I'm going to interview the person that has the co-op experience before the person that has nothing on their resume. It's just because I know that they will have some of the skills that I need, and I'll have to spend less time training them once they get started on site and in a real job. So it is important to try to take advantage of that program and get as much experience as you can before you get out of school.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And for those of you who are looking to do co-ops and internships as a part of your Archaway experience, here's an alum talking about, you know, the importance of all of that and the experience that you gain. All right. Thank you, Sarah. So next, Rhea, I have a couple questions for you. So I guess the first question that I have for you, kind of relating it back to the RPI student experience, you had mentioned earlier you're a studio arts minor. And in your materials, you talked about how it really kind of broke up technical classes, which is what we hope for humanities classes to do, and yet is still something that you use today. So can you talk a bit about this minor? Because I think that it's a unique one, I'd say, for biomedical engineers, but something that I think others would be interested in too.
Sure. Yeah, I will say I happened upon it because I was intending to take arts classes, and by the time I got 3 in, I realized I could just minor in if I took another. So I didn't plan it, but it worked out pretty well. I there was one semester in which basic drawing fit, or was it fundamentals of 2D design? It was one of the more basic classes, just fit in my schedule beautifully. And it actually did help keep some sanity in at a time where there were classes that I just felt like a lot of the same, not in a bad way, of course, but it did my brain good to have a more creative outlet. Whereas if you're learning a lot of theoretical things and then applying them and proving you can apply them and proving what you learned, it's such a different use of your brain. So yeah, so it became a very nice use of my time. And I had always been into arts in high school and had a really great arts teacher. So it was nice to be able to sort of continue that education. And it really wasn't that different when I thought about project-based work versus arts, because you have projects in art too. And so you have deliverables, your stakeholders, your professor or your teammates, and you really do have to allot your time, your resources, and execute possibly on a creative route. But it really isn't that different. And now when I use my art, whether, if I am doing something as sort of a favor to a friend or someone needs some help with something, it's the same. There's deliverables, there's a budget, there's a deadline. So there are expectations that are very similar to the engineering process. And so both educations were helpful to each other. They're pretty symbiotic. And, like I said, in my previous and now current work situation, I think my technical title is VP of Operations and Quality, and yet I designed the logo with the help of my team, of course, and built the website sort of from semi-scratch. So there's a lot of technical, creative, and a mix of those things that I did pick up from that minor and I am able to use today. And in a bootstrapping situation, it's super, super helpful. And so I'm really grateful to those classes and to have continued working with those things, those skills.
Thank you for that. And also a very good plug for humanities classes and, the creativity that it provides too. So great. My next question is for you as well. So you kind of briefly touched upon your current experience over these past couple of questions, but so it seems that with your current position, you do a lot of different things, it seems, but you also take on both management and quality assurance or education aspects. So can you talk about, I guess, the transition from biomed into these roles and how you use biomed within these roles?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biomed education and then my track sort of solely within R&D, like I mentioned before, really put me on a lot of cross-functional teams. So you have no choice but to pay attention to what your other teammates need, what they need to do, and how you can work together to get the work done. When you're working in an R&D setting, especially at a big company, it becomes very clear, sort of in a siloed way, how you fit in for these cross-functional teams and how the decisions have to be made together. So early on in my career, I was able to represent R&D, but also work with all these different departments: quality, manufacturing, regulatory, management, of course, and really combine forces to get stuff done. And like I also mentioned, I started at Pixie and I applied for the job, and they were looking for someone with quality and manufacturing experience. And while I didn't, and I was very clear about that, I also said that I'd worked in industry in an R&D capacity and know how these things work. So, as long as you're paying attention and you normally have to at work, you can use your experience to parlay it to something else, and really get even a more holistic view on how business works, how development works, how to get a product to market, etc. And yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Yes, thank you so much for that. All right, so we'll move our individual questions on to the next panelist, who's Katrina. Katrina, again, is a student here at RPI, so a lot of these questions really focus on your experience, I'd say. So let's talk a bit about your co-op and internship experience. So it was this past year, I believe, that you had a co-op, correct? Could you talk a bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, so it was actually an internship with Edwards Life Sciences. Yep, so this past summer. So really exciting. I actually mentioned I had interned with a pharmaceutical company the previous summer, had all intentions of returning for another summer. But in the meantime, I just kind of interviewed and went to the career fair just for practice. I kind of just told myself, like, I don't want to go a whole recruiting cycle without practicing interviewing and things, and ended up finding Edwards Life Sciences, which is a cardiac-focused medical device company based in Irvine, California. And had a really great interview and ended up just becoming really interested in it accidentally. But then I had a really tough decision to make. Do I go back and potentially, go on site to the place that I had worked before and kind of expand my depth of knowledge there? Or do I try something completely new and see if it's something I like or don't like? And I ended up just taking the opportunity to expand. And I'm so, so glad I did. And that was really key in me figuring out exactly what I wanted to do and kind of comparing work in pharmaceuticals versus medical devices and seeing a little bit more of the industry. So I actually had a really unique experience as an intern. I was in new product development, R&D, but my role was more in project management, which is pretty rare for an intern. So if you're not familiar, project management is basically finding ways to organize what all the teams are doing cross-functionally and keeping in sight kind of the big picture of a project. So what we were working on was super complex implantable device and transcatheter device. So a lot of individual parts, over 240 between, tubing and little tiny screws and things. And all of this was going into a human body. So big, big job to complete. And someone needs to make sure that all of this work is being done on time for clinical studies. And our end of the our goal for the end of the year was to be in early human use. So really daunting deadlines. And the project management team works to motivate the team, make sure things are getting done on time, making sure everyone has the right resources and support to get that done. So in my role, I was actually working with quality and manufacturing and supplier quality engineers, a lot of different people. And personally, I think that was the best experience I could have gotten. Going in, I wasn't exactly sure what any of those were, but if I had a question about something, I knew exactly who to go to set up a quick meeting and ask questions. And it really opened my eyes to what the medical device industry was all about. So my big project for the summer was to lead the drawing release. So basically, all of those CAD drawings you're probably learning about in engineering communications, I was looking at a lot of those. So redlining them, which means basically looking at what needs to change. Is a dimension incorrect? Those little general notes on the side, are those specific enough for our suppliers? Going through and making any changes. So I would sit down with the R&D team, research and development team, and learn a lot about there's a specific way the drawing should read if it's going to be machined a certain way or injected molding. So really a lot of things that there's a lot more that goes into those drawings than what we see in class, but that's exactly the reason for those internships, because if we were taught everything in school, we would be in school for years and years and years. So really awesome experience, and learned so much from a lot of the older engineers. You could tell who has had a ton of experience. And I found those people and would just set up meetings with them constantly and ask them about, why is this process this way? Or why don't we try this? Luckily, that company was super into the interns asking questions, and especially my team was super, they wanted to know exactly what I thought about the product and really valued my input as like an outsider. So really awesome experience, and definitely like take that risk. I didn't know what to do for those couple weeks where I was trying to decide, do I try something new or do I stay with what I'm kind of familiar with? Take those risks. You never know where it might take you.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And my second personalized question is also for you. So I've actually known Katrina since her first year here because she was my advisee for biomedical engineering. So for one of the very many reasons I wanted to bring you on the line today to talk to our younger students was to talk a bit about your academic experience here at RPI and I guess first year and then kind of how things went from here to now and what you're up to.
Yeah, so as I'm a senior now, so I have a couple years under my belt, and really, especially this year, I've been really trying to talk with the younger, especially women I meet, because I'm president of our Society of Women Engineers, which I've found to be really critical in my experience here at RPI, but really anyone in their first couple years. So if I go back to freshman year, first semester, came to RPI, was super excited, but it really didn't end up, being all great and everything that I hoped it to be. And unfortunately, I really struggled that first semester. So came from a really small public high school. We didn't really have AP classes. Um, we had maybe like honors chemistry, honors physics, but that's about it. And I wasn't prepared academically. And when I got to freshman year and a lot of my classmates were saying, oh, this is review from AP Chem, I was lost. I couldn't figure out what a vector was. So I really struggled through my first couple years or couple couple of classes academically. And luckily, I was able to find support where I needed it. So, like I mentioned, I found the Society of Women Engineers, which is a club on campus that um, is focused on empowering women as leaders and professional engineers and technologists. And that's where I found academic support in my classmates and just a network of women in a school that can feel overwhelming at times. I also spent most of my evenings in ALAC tutoring, even when it was freezing cold and no one else was there. I was there being tutored and really just found ways to learn how to study. So luckily came back that spring semester, definitely had a better ideal of what I was working with and just kind of got better from there. So I say this because it is so everyone deals with change, and I bring this up in interviews and it actually leads to really good conversations. I've found that everyone adjusts at different times. For some people, they adjust in high school, taking those AP classes and basically having like a college workload senior year of high school. Most people, that's freshman year of college. And then for some people, it's even later, but that just shows that we're intellectual diversity. We all come from different places, have different experiences, and now I know I have a better idea of what I bring to the table. And it's really taught me a lot about, learning and finding my strengths and finding what I need to do to improve. So definitely, if you're struggling through the first couple classes, don't get down on yourself. Do not think that you can't be an engineer. I know, especially after the first round of exams, you can reconsider your whole life plan. But please just don't give up. You have to get through those first couple years, and then classes get smaller. Things just get a lot more manageable.
Thank you so much for that. And kind of some background. I met with Katrina earlier this year. I think it was earlier this semester, right? And we got off the line and I turned to my coworker, Kristen, who sets Industry Hour up. I'm like, do we have her signed up for this? Because I want her to speak to our freshmen. I want her to, get to share her experience and her successes and where she is right now, because I think it's super important to know that, everyone's kind of in similar boats, but at the same time, like you said, everyone, adjusts and changes and comes to in different ways. So thank you for your honesty and for, sharing your experience. You've done some really cool things ever since that first year too. Great. So next, I'll have a couple of questions I'll ask, again, we'll go our little rotation. I guess a brief question that I'll ask you both. Our next one would be, do you have any advice for students in terms of getting involved or pursuing those internships in college? And Sarah, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I definitely think being involved in campus life is important too. College is a great opportunity to try things that you've never tried before and that you didn't have the opportunity to do back in your hometown. I like Katrina came from a small town, and I just didn't have the opportunities to do some of the activities that RPI offers. And when you're interviewing for co-ops or even your first job, I think when you can show that you're not afraid to try new things, that's very attractive to future employers, because they know you're not going to be afraid to try new things in the work world, and you're not going to be intimidated by a challenge. So be open to those new things. Like when I came to RPI my freshman year, I remember I went to this open house where all of the different clubs were there, and you could sign up to join these different clubs. And I wanted to try, because I'd never seen anybody do this in real life, but I wanted to try fencing. And so I joined the fencing club my freshman year, and it was really a lot of fun. And I also joined, they had a spelunking club back then. I don't know if they still do that, but that was really fun too. It was a little terrifying because they took us in some crazy places, but it was a lot of fun. And I think it highlights parts of my personality that show I'm not afraid to try something. And through your career, there are going to be things that seem scary, and you have to put your game face on, and you just have to go forward and do it, because you don't want to fail, and I don't like to turn away from a challenge. So definitely take advantage of all of those things that RPI has to offer, whether they're clubs or co-ops. Like Katrina had a very good example where she was torn between two different opportunities and which direction to go, and I faced a similar dilemma when I was graduating from college, and I had two different opportunities, and I wasn't really sure which way to go. But trust your heart, you'll make the right choice, and things will work out in the end.
Thank you, Sarah. So next, Ray, same question.
Okay.
Let's see. Any advice for students in terms of getting involved and pursuing internships?
Yeah, I mean, ditto to everything that Sarah said, of course. For sure, have an open mind. I guess I'd add, so from personal experience, so when my dad was sick and needed the transplant, we happened to be in Ottawa in Canada on vacation. So because he was going back every year for checkups, one year my parents went for a checkup while I was at RPI actually, and then I got a call and they're like, yeah, we're coming back from Canada, and do you want an internship this summer? So definitely like keep your eyes open for any contacts you can make and take advantage of them. There's no shame in that game. It was a really cool experience because it was at Ottawa has a heart institute. It's the National Heart Institute actually. So there's a ton of research, and the biomed department is much like other hospitals in which we were basically sustaining the devices in the facility. But because of that, I was there, I had access to the surgical wards, I had access to the research departments. And so there's just a ton of learning in one summer. The other thing is, and this is a shameless plug, but so I'm currently president of the New Jersey chapter. I'm actually keeping tabs on the event that's happening at a brewery nearby. But I wish this were easier to do, but if you're targeting an area, maybe try to see if there's a chapter nearby. The network of RPI grads is super strong and isn't always completely organized, but I've never met an alum that's turned away a question from a younger person or not been very, very helpful. So, if there's a place you're targeting, if you want to go home, see if there's a chapter nearby. We're in New Jersey, mostly northern and central Jersey, but we're on the alumni webpage. So look for us because we are always happy to help. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And love a plug like that. That's a good thing to be able to share with students. And yeah, the network is huge. I mean, we've been around for almost 200 years. Think of it that way. And all the alum throughout the country and the world. So thank you for that. All right. And we take that question to our current student. So do you have any advice for students in terms of getting involved and pursuing internships in college?
Yeah, I definitely
I think, hold on one second. The audio went out. give it a couple of seconds here. Mute. Yeah, so I don't know what happened. Hold on.
How about now?
There we go. Can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear you now. We had it for a second. All right, no, it's still not going. I guess what we can do if you'd like is still nothing yet. Oh man. Maybe give it a couple more seconds. We'll go on to the next question and then hopefully have you bot back in if that works. All right, Sarah, so let's, I guess, have you answer this next question. Katrina, if we get your audio going again, what we'll do is have you come back in and answer 2 questions. So, Sarah, my question for you is, what do you wish you knew as a first-year college student that you know now?
I wish that I had studied more and partied less. Definitely, that is the true answer. I think I just wish that I had focused more on my studies because when you go to college, it's all this freedom, and you're like, oh, I'm feeling a little crazy. But I mean, I wish that I had focused more on my studies. I think I would have gotten more out of the whole RPI experience and the education. So that's my honest answer. So
I appreciate that. I do appreciate the honesty for that. All right, and Rhea, I will ask you the same question. Is there anything you wish you knew as a first-year college student that you know now?
Okay, I mean, I'll like half ditto Sarah. But I think the other thing is that grades don't matter as much as they did in high school. I think that was big. I think, I don't know if Katrina can hear me, but same on the struggles in the beginning. And I wasn't from a rural area. I mean, Northern New Jersey is far from rural, but I went to a small private school and it was sort of the same situation. We didn't have AP classes. And, when you're getting to campus, you're converging upon a place in which everyone is the smart kid in school. So, take it easy on yourself because I won't say that grades don't matter at all, but it's not as cutthroatly quantified. I mean, maybe if you're going to grad school, but the workplace is a place for you to show that you can learn more because you've learned so much in engineering school and you survived it. So I wish I knew that. And even if someone had told me those words verbatim, I don't think I was in the capacity to understand them. But if I could have fully understood that, I would have been calmer about things. So it's that sort of realization has brought upon a lot of confidence outside of school. So I guess that's a good thing. But, take it easy on yourselves every now and then.
can I add to something that you said too, Raya? I think that's so true because a lot of my classmates really tortured themselves to get really
Oh,
perfect grades and
yeah.
really stressed themselves out.
Yes,
And, I think it's somewhat important to get your first job, but I
exactly.
mean, no one has ever asked me about my grades after that first job. And some of them didn't even want to know what my grades were when I was doing those first like rounds of interviews.
Yeah.
So the grades are important, especially if you want to go to grad school. But not like once you're working,
Mm,
nobody ever looks at your transcript. And no one ever asks about it, honestly.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you both for that. And again, for that honesty too and perspective. Katrina, can we hear you? Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're gonna double ask you questions. So, I guess the first question we'll ask you is the last question that we just did. Can you talk a bit about advice that you have for students in terms of getting involved and also pursuing internships?
Yeah. I guess for me, the biggest thing is don't forget that we're all just like people too, which sounds silly, but I guess a lot of people really get caught up in I need an internship, I need a co-op, I need to be technically, you know, apt, and you do. That's definitely a huge part of it. But also remember that the recruiters and anyone you talk to, the people who interview you, they're also just people at the end of the day. So don't forget about that. And I guess one story I have from this is the first internship I had with a pharmaceutical company. At the end of the summer, we did little intern superlatives. And the one I got was most memorable during on campus recruiting. And the reason this was because um, this company does Regeneron right down the road from RPI does an incredible job with working with RPI. So they do resume critiques, and in the fall they just have a ton of career fair prep and info sessions and things. And I made it a point to go to every single one of those, even if I heard the intern program spiel 10 times. I went to them because I wanted to show that I was interested. And every time you go to one of those events, they take your email, you fill out a little form, and a lot of companies keep track of that because they want to see who's coming to their, if you repeatedly come to their things, you are interested. But after every one of those things, I would stay and actually ask a question or talk to the recruiters. And over time, I learned that one of them was engaged and getting married in the fall. So she was very open about sharing the news about that. So we ended up just talking. My sister at the time was also engaged and getting married that fall. So that was just something we shared. And we ended up talking about that. And so every time we'd see each other, I'd ask what the wedding updates are. And that's just how we connected. And that makes me memorable when she goes back and what makes me stand out among hundreds and hundreds of applicants. So just remember that. Ask a good question, find something to connect with the interviewer, keep those fun little things like spelunking on your resume because they might just bring up a good conversation and they have to remember you to give you the job. So that would be my advice.
That is also great advice. And thank you so much for that. So my next rapid fire question for you then is there anything that you wish that you knew as a first year student that you know now?
Yeah, I'm not quite like out of the out of it yet, but if I could go back, I would say I would definitely do undergrad research. I My first year I was just really focused on like getting my GPA up and, dealing with my classes alone. But if I did, had to do it again, I would try undergrad research. It's now there's such incredible, amazing things going on in this school, and not a ton of people know like all the fun research that's going on. So talk to your professors, even if they seem really scary and intimidating and don't seem happy to see you. Just talk to them, ask what their research is, and get involved because there's really awesome stuff going on. And to be able to talk about that later is really impressive.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And we have a couple of students on the line. We will see if, I guess our last question here will be more of questions back and forth. So, um, panel, do you have any questions for these current students? Anything you want to know? So we have both probably undeclared, mostly undeclared, I'd say, on the line today, but also a few biomed students perhaps. And if not, that's fine. We're gonna flip the question in a minute anyways.
I guess not really a question, but one piece of advice. So I went to a conference this past weekend for the Society of Women Engineers and heard so many great talks and workshops and keynotes and things. And one of those mentioned at some point, look at where your hobbies are, because that can kind of give you hints into like what you're really interested in. So if you really like, I don't know, like making little robot things, like that might tell you something about what you're interested in. And there are, like we mentioned, biomedical engineering is so vast. If you have a hobby in a certain thing, there's probably, if you really like sports, a lot of people are super athletic or just enjoy sports. So many opportunities for that within biomedical engineering. So find what you truly enjoy when like no one else is making you do something. What do you find enjoyment in? And then see how that can maybe relate back to what you want to end up doing in real life.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
I would echo what Katrina said. I think it's very important when you're trying to choose your career that you choose something that you really enjoy doing, because it's going to make your weeks at work and your months and years at work just much more enjoyable. I have truly enjoyed everything that I have done through my career, and it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like I look forward to going into work. I enjoy the people that I work with. I enjoy seeing the results of my labor, and it does not feel like a drudgery. You know, on sitcoms on TV, they show people who are trudging to work and they're not happy and they're complaining. But I really truly feel like I have made a good choice and I am very happy doing what I am doing. And I think that's important when you're trying to decide where to take your life. You know, follow what you like and enjoy your time.
That's great advice. Thank you.
I don't know if anyone's, it's a couple of them. If anyone's willing to share, but I mean, we talked about this last year, how I don't know that you can go wrong as long as you enjoy engineering, to pick one and stick with it and finish, because I have plenty of mechanical engineers and electrical engineers that have beat me out for jobs, right? So yeah, and I think some can feel too general. Some majors can feel too general and some can feel too specific, but I really do think, you know, back to our topic before, engineering school just really proves that you've learned many things that can be pretty tough for most people, and you can continue to build on that. You don't have to remember everything, but you know, you survived. So you can take that and go many different directions, grad school, the workplace, different, many friends that left engineering and are in finance or in law, and that's okay. So you know, put a little pressure on yourself, because pressure is good, but not too much pressure.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. So do our students have any questions for our panelists tonight? If you do, feel free to either unmute or you can throw them in the chat. And if you don't have any questions, that is okay as well. A couple minutes here. We have some students who are, you know, learning between majors and such. So even if no questions tonight, I know we've all learned a lot from everyone's perspective. All right, so we have, this was very informative. Thank you. So one of our students here. All right, so I guess with that, we'll go ahead and conclude the program for this evening then. I'd like to thank our panelists so much for being here with us this Monday evening to talk about their experiences in biomedical engineering, both at RPI and beyond. We have Katrina just threw her LinkedIn in the chat, so other panelists, you're welcome to do that too, or if you wanted to provide contact if people have questions, sometimes people do that as well. But again, thank you all so much for being here this evening and yes, giving a bit of perspective about your experiences. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for having
Bye,
me.
everyone. Oh, of course, thank you for being here. Bye, good night.
Bye.